I am incredibly alarmed by what appears to be our First Amendment rights being attacked. This is what I do for a living. I don't like that. But you know he's coming. The man is coming, and you have to adjust accordingly.
Well, that was Stephen A. Smith talking about the Jimmy Kimmel situation. And when I heard him say that, I thought to myself, what exactly does he mean? Well, he was kind enough to accept our invitation, and he's with us right now. He's also the host of the new show, Straight Shooter with Stephen A. on SiriusXM, Wednesday nights from 6 to 8. Stephen A., welcome back. I'm glad that you're here. I want to dive right in because you said the man is coming and you have to adjust accordingly. Tell me what you mean by that and why that is different than, say, pandering or self-censorship, and you think just the right move.
Well, listen, I think it's obvious that the president is on a vengeance tour. He's out to exact retribution against all naysayers, all critics, anybody that he deems necessary to go after. And he's made no apologies for it. He's told us on numerous occasions that is what he intends to do, and that's exactly what he's doing. And when you look at Jimmy Kimmel and the stance that he took, do I believe that it was the wisest thing to do? No, but it's certainly within his right to do so, and it should be within his right to do so, as is the case for Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, or anybody else, because as our former President Barack Obama articulated, these kind of matters are at the heart of a democracy. First Amendment rights, the right to free speech, no matter who it is. And when you're trying to use government influence like Trump has done with the FCC, Mr. Brendan Carr, and you're trying to force your will upon folks from a government's perspective, that's problematic. That goes exactly against First Amendment protections. And so the fact that President Trump has been willing to take that stance, has been unapologetic in doing so, definitely points the finger of, trying to infringe upon our First Amendment rights. I was just of the mindset, however, that he's made it very, very obvious for quite a long time that this is exactly what he was willing to do. Stephen Colbert was obviously an example before Jimmy Kimmel became an example. And I was of the mindset that Jimmy Kimmel, you've got to know that. And all of us have to know that to some degree and operate accordingly. For certain severe critics of him, the man is coming. He's not playing around. He's unapologetic about the retribution he's willing to exact against anybody he deems harmful to his ego, his psyche, his presidency in his own way that he may choose to materialize it.
But what does
Know
that mean
this
then?
and
Hold
operate
on, I want you to, but you said know this and operate accordingly. Describe though, because when you say operate accordingly, you can on the one hand know this and the response can be, and I'm not going to lay down and take it. I'm not going to stand aside and allow and acquiesce. The other side is move accordingly, sort of under the radar in some way. How are you defining operate accordingly? Because I know from just hearing you and following your whole career, you are somebody who's been unapologetic about speaking your mind, having even unpopular
Yep,
opinions, and not pulling any punches. So is this different than
that's
that?
true. Yeah, because I'm fair and balanced. I'm not one-sided and I'm not directing my eye at one individual consistently since 2015. That's not the kind of behavior I choose to engage in. Even people that I don't like, that I've been on the record stating I don't like, I still remain fair and balanced. When they deserve to be complimented, I say so. I don't avoid complimenting them just because I may not like them. And when they deserve to be criticized, I don't hesitate to do so. And their opponents or people that are on the opposite side of the aisle than other figures, I'll make sure to call them out too, under the same guise. If I agree with them, I'll say so. If I don't agree with them, I'll say so and I'll say why. You have to remember that with Trump and the government itself, particularly as presently constructed, they're looking and accusing folks of being fair and partial. They're not being fair and balanced. That's the accusation that they're
Hmm.
making. If you know that's what his fight is going to be, make sure that you don't hesitate to criticize others on the opposite side just as equally. So when he comes complaining about you, he can't say that you've been biased and discriminate against him and his administration. Make sure you're able to do that because throughout history, from Johnny Carson to Jay Leno to David Letterman and others, they pulled no punches with anybody. But over the last several years, definitely there has been more cynicism and skepticism thrown in his direction, even when he wasn't the president, when he left office in 2020, as much as it was happening when he was in office for his first term. Fair and
Huh.
balanced is the answer to that question. That's how you ward off some of the arguments that he may try to make on your behalf.
I understand how you navigate the minefield and not to be naive. I do want to turn for a second, though, from somebody who is not censoring at all oneself. I'm talking about the former Vice President, Kamala Harris, because her new book,
Yep.
very blunt. I mean, she called Biden's decision to keep running reckless. She says she was disappointed with Tim
Mhm.
Walz's debate performance, that she actually wanted Pete Buttigieg as VP, but didn't pick him because he'd be too risky because he's a gay man. She claimed that Governor Newsom avoided her call, called Governor Shapiro too ambitious, accused Biden of distracting her right before the debate with Trump. I mean, I could go on. I do wonder what you think the end game is here. Does any of this help her party move forward now that she is being so open about how she really felt? Or is this something that is perhaps transparency that might cut off one's nose to spite someone's face?
I believe Kamala Harris's political career is over. I think you've seen the last of her with this book, politically. I'm
Mm.
quite sure she's a highly intelligent woman, very accomplished. She's a former state attorney general. She's a former senator. She's a former vice president of the United States, and obviously the Democratic nominee for the presidency of the United States in 2024. But this was the last straw. And I'm going to tell you why. Because although I'm certainly not an advocate of her diming out her boss and talking about whatever deficiencies he may have had, you could have said something. You could have done something other than what you did. And I don't want to hear about 107 days and that's all you had. You know what 107 days gave you? It gave you the opportunity to take over the campaign and do it your way instead of capitulating to what his people wanted you to do and you doing whatever you thought was necessary under the realm or the guise of loyalty and costing and in some people's eyes costing yourself the presidency. There are things that she could have done that was more effective. Don't get me started with her appearance on The View. Don't get me started with when Sonny Houston looked at her and said, "Is there anything that you would do differently than Joe Biden?" And I can't think of anything. Nobody wants to hear that when the country was in the state that it was in, and we knew that change was the order of the day. And you had a candidate that was not only using her rhetoric, her verbiage, and the lack thereof from him, but also was accusing her as hiding and engaging in his own definition of
Mm.
machismo or misogynism or whatever you want to call it, to point out how he was a man's man and he goes everywhere and he talks to everyone, while she was not willing to do that initially. And then you come out with a book in the aftermath of it all, and you've talked about Pete Buttigieg and him being gay, or you talked about Josh Shapiro, the governor that I just interviewed the other day, and you talked about him being too eager for the vice presidency when he was clearly a better choice than Tim Walz, or you want to talk about Gavin Newsom now, but you
Mm.
wouldn't do it before.
Mm.
Nobody's trying to hear that now. That is a candidate that's on her way out the door. And I'm not saying I wish it. I've had the pleasure of meeting her once before. She is a very nice person, very accomplished. I respect her. But when I look at the excerpts from this book, it's too little, too late. And that's what this comes down to. As far as I am concerned, I believe, and I hope I'm wrong, but I believe her political career is over.
Mm.
The minute people buy this book and read it with the stuff that she could have said and the stuff that she could have done, but refrained from doing, which obviously contributed to her losing the election, it's too little, too late. Are you in it to win it or not? She wasn't. And that is that.
Well, now I want to read the whole book and see how the context around the excerpts might answer some of the questions as to why now, why this, and why she's saying what she is saying.
Most
Stephen
people
A.
ain't
Smith,
better than
huh?
most people ain't gonna read the whole book. Most people ain't gonna read the whole book. They're gonna take the excerpts and
I'm gonna
run
read
with
the
it.
whole book.
I'm not saying they shouldn't. You should read the whole book. But there's a lot of people that's gonna take the excerpts and run from it and use it as a reason to dismiss anything that she's saying. So I hope the book is very, very successful for her, because that's what she's gonna have to fall back on in her wonderful life and all her accomplishments. But her future as a politician, I believe, is over.